Our first story comes from Shelba, Robison, and it's titled, Why I Am Not President of the United States.
Thank you so much, yes. Well, tonight I'm going to talk about politics. Don't groan. You might have heard that last year there was an election. Raise your hand if you voted for me. You're a liar. I wasn't even on the ballot. I had friends who wanted me to be, but I refused. They wanted to know why. I'm going to share the story with you. First of all, I'm part of a generation that learned to read like every kid in the United States did in the mid-50s of the last century by the sight method. The sight method, you recognized the letters and the words. You had no idea how to pronounce them because we didn't have any phonics. I loved reading and I read a lot. And I knew a lot of words, how to spell them, not so much how to pronounce them. When I went to the third grade, that happened to be in a presidential election year. And my teacher, Mrs. Martin, was very excited. She said, we're going to study government this year and find out about the president, the history of the United States. And we're at the proper time when when the grown-ups vote for president, we're going to vote for class president. She started us out with showing pictures of Congress and the White House. We also had a picture of inside the White House, and there were portraits of all the presidents. She pointed them out. Here's George Washington. Here's Thomas Jefferson. Here's Abraham Lincoln. These were the great presidents of the United States. I looked at it, and I didn't see any women, but I thought that was because the photographer didn't go down the hall right. Because Mrs. Martin told me, and everybody, that anybody, any citizen in the United States could become president. I believed her. The semester started. We got close to November. It was November 3rd. She said, okay, we're going to open up nominations. This boy raised his hand and he said, I nominate Margaret. My friend nominated me. I have to tell you, I couldn't stand Margaret. I called her Miss Priss. Her mother would comb her hair in the morning, give a center part that was perfectly straight, and then two braids that were smooth and regular and all the same size, and her hair went down to the middle of her back. And then her mother would tie bows on the end that matched the dress that Margaret wore. I might have been a little jealous. When I got up in the morning, I had to comb my own hair. My part was crooked. My pigtails were messy and lumpy. My hair wasn't that long. My braids didn't even touch my shoulders. And I had no bows. Margaret would wear black patent Mary Jane shoes to school. I wore sensible, sturdy, brown Oxfords. You can see why I didn't like her. After the nominations, Mrs. Martin said, come to my desk and I need to talk to you both. and she told us that we had to make a campaign speech. And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Oh, a campaign speech is when you see a problem in the classroom, and then you tell people in a talk how you're going to solve that problem." When she said that, I knew I was going to be president. Because we had a really big problem in the class. We didn't get out to recess on time. The bell would ring, we'd hear the other classroom doors open, we'd hear kids laughing and shouting. We were inside doing arithmetic problems. It was awful. So then she told us to go home. Think about it. I didn't even tell my mother I was nominated, but I did think about it. Margaret went home, told her mother. Her mother drove to downtown. My mother didn't even drive. Her mother bought Margaret a new dress with matching bows. She bought a bunch of canning jar lids, a lot of safety pins, and a bottle of glue. The only glue I knew was flour and water paste that we mixed up in a custard cup. Margaret made sure the next morning I learned exactly what her mother was doing. She took an ice pick and scratched the letters "Margaret for President" on the white side. She glued the safety pins on the brass side. "Margaret for President," it said. The next morning, Margaret got to school early. She was wearing her new dress with the matching bows. She had a box full of her campaign buttons, she called it. I'd never heard of campaign buttons. She stood by the door of the classroom, and as every kid walked by, she said, "Button for Margaret, campaign button for you, vote for Margaret." Everybody took one. My best friend took one. Heck, I wanted one too, but when I went by Margaret, she said, no, this is for people who are going to vote for me. Well, the time had come for the campaign speech. Margaret gave hers first. I have to confess, I don't remember anything she said. Not anything. I got up and I walked proudly, just like the music. I knew I was going to win. And I said, "We all have a problem in this class. We don't get out to recess on time. By the time we do get out, there's a line in the monkey bars and we don't even have time to have our turn. The boys chase us at recess all the way to the end, but we don't even have time for them to catch us." They gave us a smooch, but I didn't mention that. "If I'm elected president," I said, "I will make sure that we have the word that I'd only seen in print but never heard out loud was stuck in the back of my throat. It just wouldn't come out. I took a breath, and then I went for it. "If I'm elected president, I'll make sure we have a shaduli so we can go out to recess at time." I expected everyone to smile and nod their head. I looked at the classroom. They had blank faces. or a frown. I tried to get out of the mess. You know, it's like a clock, or it's like a clock or a plan to tell us when to do spelling or social studies or recess. Still no smiles, only more frowns this time. I turned to Mrs. Martin. Mrs. Martin, you know. She had a frown on her face, and she just went like this. I wanted to die. I wanted just to melt on the floor. But I couldn't. I walked back to my seat. I heard the boys snicker. I heard the girls giggle. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. When I sat down, I knew I'd blown it. Then we had to have the vote. Margaret, 31. Shelba, 1. That was even worse because everybody knew I'd voted for myself. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why I'm not President of the United States. I vowed that day never to run for any office ever. And I haven't. But I still think about those pictures of the White House. I want a woman, her picture hanging on the wall. I know that women can be as evil, as dumb, as mediocre, and as great as all the presidents we've ever had before. I would like to see a woman elected in my time. I won't be the president, but I'm going to work to make sure there's a woman in the White House.
I want to